Buenos días a todos y todas. ¿Cómo están?
Good morning to all, to each of you. I'm Laura Zomer. I'm a ICFJ Night and Disinformation Fellow and the General Director of Chequeado of Argentina, and I will be leading and sharing this event with you as your moderator over the course of the next 2 days. I'm very happy to formally launch this incredible series of master classes of the Disarming Disinformation program, with which we have put together a dream team to collaborate and investigate on who pays when lies are disseminated in the Americas. But before beginning, let me clarify to all of you that you may follow this event in the language in which you feel most comfortable, in your native language. We have at the bottom of your Zoom channel, you will see a globe icon, and you can choose there to listen to this event in either English or Portuguese or Spanish, or you can listen to the original audio, the language that you feel most comfortable in. I am so moved to see so many known new faces and so many people that I haven't met before, and to know that more than 300 people have registered of colleagues from all of the countries in our region, with the exception of Belize, Guyana, and Suriname. And next year, we will go find colleagues there as well. Without further ado, and moving on ahead with other presentations, let me present my colleague, Cristina Tardáguila, Senior Program Director of ICFJ and founder of Lupa, Agência Lupa of Brazil.
Good morning, Lau. Good morning, my friends from the Americas. I'm having goosebumps from seeing all these people together, ready to fight this great problem that is disinformation. And of course, that I need to thank not only our production team that is here with us and is allowing us to broadcast in 3 different languages simultaneously live, and also to our speakers, the fantastic Craig Silverman, who's already with us, Patricia Campos Mello, that will come very soon, and tomorrow, Claire Warglow and Janina Sirenini. And I feel that this is a unique opportunity for those who are willing to reveal who's behind the funding of this information. And I'm certain that we'll get a group from here that is together, that works together, that is very strong and is well trained to never again allow disinformers to go loose around our world. So I cannot stop thanking our alliance and our partnership with Knight Center, who are our friends and are also essential for this event to happen in a continental size. And I cannot stop thanking the funders of the project Disarming Disinformation, and also the presence of all of you here online. I'm seeing over 200 people here, and we're going to get a group that, as was mentioned, is going to be just amazing. And I want to tell you that we received the proposals, and we're going to get participants from all of Latin America. And we even received requests for these series of master classes from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from Middle East. And unfortunately, we had to let them know that they could not participate because we were going to deal with the problem in America that is bringing us together. So this first event of the Disarming Disinfo program is the first step in a project that will keep us all connected and together until July next year, at least. As you saw in the enrollment process, we are going to have this event tomorrow and today, seeking to train all this group for the investigation that we're going to have in Austin in April next year. very close to our amazing event that Mr. Rosenthal is offering, Wise Out. So the best of the best are going to be selected to receive funding and to have time and money enough to devote themselves to what we love to do the most, which is reporting and revealing who those disinformers were. So I won't take longer from you, and I want to thank all of you. I want to give the floor to my dear friend, Rosenthal Alves, who, without a question, is the most beloved person in this continent. Rosenthal, kisses from here. Kisses to you too, and thank you so much. It's just fantastic that we can speak in Portuguese. I want to remind everyone once again that we have this globe at the bottom of your screen where you can select the language you prefer if you're not understanding the most beautiful language in the world, in all modesty. And you can change languages. We have a fantastic team of interpreters, and we work with them at the Night Center from many years ago. So I want to tell you that it's a source of great joy to us here at the Night Center to participate in this innovative project and this audacious, I would say, project that is probably concerning or raising concerns to some people in our continent. Because in a way, we fell behind in terms of disinformation, because I always say that the bad guys learned before the good guys to use this digital ecosystem for their purposes. So I say that the good guys were a little bit afraid and saying, but what's happening here? What is this? How is it that people are just believing in all those lies? And how is it that all those lies are being spread? And a lot of people thought that it was organic. But increasingly, journalists started to discover the evidence that this is many times organized and even industrialized and funded with very specific goals in mind. So when Chris mentioned this project to me, I was very enthusiastic about it, because this is actually an opportunity to work with this dream team from these master classes. Craig, Patricia, Clay, and Janina are an actual dream team. They are people who are very skilled in this, and it's just a privilege to be trained by them. So from our standpoint, from the Night Center, we are honored to participate in this project of the ICFJ. And as I always mention, when Christina mentioned them, actually the best conference also in all modesty of journalism in our galaxy, I always mention when we're about to begin, let's rock and roll. So let's rock and roll now.
Thank you very much, Rosenthal. And for those of you who are just now joining us, you can choose your language.
And we are going to be starting soon with our first master class, the one we are trying to establish concepts about. We know so that we can define what we are already know about it, we as informers, as journalists, and where do the challenges lie and who's paying for everything. That's important. So Craig's going to bring us some tools to better investigate the topics, and then Patricia Campos Melo will be sharing with us political disinformation. And tomorrow, Claire is going to be bringing us disinformation on health and science issues. And then Georgina will bring us other tools as well. So this is generally speaking, but I do believe that beyond the content we are going to bring you today, we're going to leave you with good ideas for the future and very excited about it. And so there are some housekeeping rules. I've seen Greg, he's right there. So the conferences, the master classes, they will last 45 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes for questions and answers, and Greg is going to be answering questions here. And thank you, Teresa, for her help, because she's going to be putting together the questions that come up. And if we have some recording as well, if somebody that is somewhere else or there is an issue with that, and if you have an off-the-record question, you could send us and let us know that it is off the record. Otherwise, it's going to be an official thing. So we are going to have also the presence of Renata Salvini, a wonderful colleague. She's an expert, and she's going to be asking us to fill in a survey about the conferences and what should we be changing or improving for next time. So we do aim to raise awareness and to create an impact. So Craig Silverman is a journalist, a Canadian journalist, and currently he is a reporter and ProPublica, and he works with vote platforms, misinformation, online manipulation, and he used to be an editor for BuzzFeed, and he wrote different books, and he was the editor, the famous The Verification Handbook for Disinformation and Media Manipulation. But besides that, I'd like to start by conveying some curious data. So we'll start with a ping pong, a quick one. Okay, question and answers, mountain or beach?
Ooh, that's tough. I think I'll take the beach.
Ok. Comida preferida.
Favorite food?
I like ribs, pork ribs.
Ok. Coffee or tea. O café o té.
So this is the thing that people sometimes find crazy. I don't drink either of them. I don't drink anything with caffeine. So maybe a little peppermint tea, herbal,
Okay.
but you know.
Ok. Ok. Ciudad preferida en las Américas.
Which is your favorite city in the Americas? You choose whatever you would like to go.
Oh boy, I can go anywhere.
Américas.
In the Americas. You know, I have to say, I have still not been to Brazil. And so I think I would love to go to Brazil and you know, maybe either Rio or Sao Paulo. It's tough to choose between, but I still haven't been to Brazil. And that's definitely on the list.
Okay. Gato o perro.
Cats or dogs?
We have one of each. We have a cat and we have a dog. So I feel like now it's, you know, it's like picking your favorite child, but I always have dogs more than cats. So I guess I'd go dog.
Ok, se nota que sos periodista porque no me contestás directo ninguna.
You never answer directly the question. Have you noticed that?
I did say dog in the end.
Okay. Esta tiene que ser directa.
This must be next world champion football, I mean, soccer.
Okay, so listen, Canada, for the first time since 1986, even the translator was like, oh, come on. That's hilarious. For the first time since 1986, we're in. We actually, as you know, we did very well in qualifying. I'm sure a lot of you are very unhappy about that. You know, I believe we beat Mexico, correct? So I have to hope for Canada. And then the second thing I usually hope for is I love to see an underdog, like maybe one of an African nation or a small country make a long run. That's always what I love to see.
Ok, perfecto. Muchísimas gracias. Todo tuyo. La clase y la gente quiere escuchar.
Thank you. The floor is yours now.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're all warmed up. Thank you so much for that, Laura. What a pleasure to be working with you, everybody from these wonderful organizations, and also to be part of this great team of trainers. I'm excited to see what the other master classes will hold. It's actually, the timing on this is really perfect because I have spent a lot of time this year in particular spending time looking at digital advertising and the funding of disinformation, and have also tried to take a bit of a more global approach for it. I do work for an American newsroom, and things tend to be too America focused. But so it is wonderful to see a program that is taking in all of the Americas and hopefully equipping you to do some great investigative work. So let me share my screen and let's just dive right into it, because we have about 45 minutes, as you heard, for the presentation. And then we're gonna have time for your questions, which I'm very excited for, by the way. So please hold on to those. I wanna walk you through some of the approaches around examining and identifying the funding, in particular of websites. So if we wanna understand how they're earning money, where that money is coming from, and how we can learn more about who is helping them earn that money, we can have some good starting points for our investigation. So here are the 4 things I'm going to go through. Number 1, again, how disinformation websites are typically earning money. So there are a bunch of different ways, and oftentimes it's not just one. They use a combination of revenue approaches. 2 is to then see which ones are present. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you identify different types of advertising, different types of making money on websites. And then I'm going to give you a case study of a story I worked on about a year ago, where we tried to figure out where the money from particular ads were coming from a website, and how that website, run by an American extremist, was able to keep earning money, in this case from Google, even though he had been banned from some other services. And then just talk about some of the things you want to keep in mind as you're trying to examine the flow of money. All right, so let's talk about these different revenue streams that we will often see for publishers of disinformation. And of course, I'm talking about websites, but oftentimes the website is the place where the money is being earned, and they rely on social media, whether it's bringing people from Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp to earn that money. And sometimes, obviously, in some of your countries, YouTube is very big and popular. That can be very straightforward in terms of YouTube providing the ads on their videos. But a website can have a lot of different types of revenue sources. So these include display ads and content ads, which are 2 types of digital advertising that we're going to look at in detail. Also sponsored content, which is a traditional kind of revenue stream. It used to be called, pardon me, advertorial. Newspapers for a long time would accept money to publish content that sort of looked like an article, but was actually an advertisement. And that's also, of course, something that happens with disinformation websites as well. Then another type of revenue stream is affiliate marketing. And again, I'm going to give you more detail on this. If you're not familiar with it, that's okay. We're going to learn about it. And the last 3 are ones that are often mixed in with different types of advertising. So one will be membership, asking people to pay money monthly or every year to get access to exclusive content or to be a supporter of the website. Donations, rather than offering a membership benefit or membership offering, they will simply just say, hey, if you like our content, give us money. And donations are helpful because sometimes that reveals information about the people and company running the website. And then the last is e-commerce. Many disinformation websites are also selling t-shirts, stickers, health products. You know, when Claire talks about health disinformation in this scenario, they are often selling supplements, health products, alternative cures. And so that e-commerce piece can be very important to be aware of. So those are the ones that are kind of the most common. And they are some of the ones that you can take a methodology to identify. But the last one that I also want to mention here is kind of the hardest to detail and to uncover. And this is one that requires just really good, strong, traditional, journalism and reporting, which is if someone, a website, an organization have undisclosed funders. So maybe there is, a wealthy person who agrees with them, who gives them money, and this is not declared publicly. Maybe they have companies and money flows into these companies from other companies and that helps fund them. Maybe money flows to them directly or indirectly from states. So maybe there is, a country, a government that wants to fund a particular website and their point of view, and they try to give money secretly. And so this is the hardest one to identify because it is hidden, it is undisclosed. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the approaches for trying to figure that out. All right, so let's talk about our first two types of ads. So, we're going to talk about display and content ads. These are the most common types of ads that you will see on a website. And so they can be on websites, they can also be in apps. And what you should know is that publishers often work with many different partners to place advertising on their website. And so maybe they work with Google. Maybe they also work with Taboola or Outbrain or MGID. Maybe in your country, there are smaller, more local ad networks. And if that's the case, then you may see that present as well. Most of these ads are placed in an automated buying and selling auction process. It gets very technical, it gets very complicated. I'll explain it a little bit more on the next slide, but understand that these are being placed automatically. So this is part of a much bigger advertising ecosystem. And when you go to a website and it has these automatically or programmatically is the term, placed ads, the ads that are being shown to you are targeted at you based on, your browsing history, based on your location, different details and data that has been gathered about you. And so you will see certain types of ads shown to you, but you should also think, can you use a VPN and change your IP address to maybe get different types of ads shown to you? Could you have colleagues who have, different online profiles to also visit and view ads? That's an important piece of trying to understand which ads are actually being placed on the site. And as we'll see with the Steve Bannon example, the advertisers whose ads end up on disinformation websites, they often have no idea that that's where their ads are appearing. And that's one of the crazy things about the advertising world right now is advertisers are funding disinformation sites and they have no idea about that. Okay, so to talk briefly, this is actually a description that we put of a few paragraphs in our most recent story about Google funding disinformation sites around the world to describe programmatic advertising. And the key thing to understand is that there is a buyer. So the buyer is the brand who wants to advertise and buy ads. And there is a seller. And the seller, in this case, is the disinformation publisher, the website. They have articles, they have available ad slots on those articles, and they want to sell that ad space to a buyer. And in between are companies like Google that will take all of the things the buyers want, take all of the space available from the sellers, and create, a market, kind of like a stock exchange, where the buyers and the sellers are matched, there is an auction, and the ads appear. And this happens so fast. This happens in the blink of an eye. And it happens for hundreds of billions of dollars of advertising revenue around the world every year. And amazingly, again, it means that advertisers often have no idea where their ads are appearing. Okay, so let's talk about how we identify content ads. So content ads are the ones, if you're familiar with Taboola and Outbrain, those companies are the biggest content ad networks in the world. And content ads are called this because they kind of look like content. So on this page from an American disinformation website, we can see the content ads are here. They do have the word advertisement labeled on them. And they're next to an article, and they look kind of similar to the article. They have the same color in the headline, but they are labeled in small text as an advertisement. And we can also see in the corner the name of the ad network, the content ad network that is providing these ads. In this case, it's ZergNet, okay? So this is one of the rules to understand about identifying these programmatic, these automatically placed ads, is usually in the upper right-hand corner is the name of the company, the ad network that is providing them. Okay, so this is something that we can learn and we will test on content ads and also display ads. So now we know, in this case, the Gateway Pundit gets at least some ads from ZergNet. So the Gateway Pundit and ZergNet are working together. So, as you're doing your investigation, you would start to understand who are the different ad networks that this website works with. Now let's talk about display ads. So display ads are a little bit different, right? We can see the difference here. Before, it looked like an article with a headline and a picture, right? In a display ad, it is the classic kind of banner ad, okay? And so I'm sure you've seen these and you're familiar with these. In this case, this is a banner ad for the American Red Cross that appeared on a far-right extremist German website, okay? So again, remember, does the American Red Cross want to advertise on a far-right German website? No. And when we reached out to them, they said this was, not something that we had wanted, but it's happening all the time, and it's happening in your countries as well. And this is the kind of thing that you'll be able to identify. So we see the ad here. How do we figure out which company helped place this ad for the American Red Cross? Well, remember, we look in the upper right-hand corner. And so, just to give another example here, as we get ready to kind of see who's placing these, here is a French website publishing an article denying the existence of human-made climate change. And on this page, I've highlighted 3 ads. All of these are display ads. They come from 3 different organizations. And so you will see many different types of display ad units and display ads on one single page. And you will often on a page see a mixture of display ads and content ads, because if you look on the right-hand side, there is content ads right next to the display ads. And so now you need to practice identifying content ads and content ad networks and display ads and display ad networks, because this is who the website is working with to make money. Okay, so our example with the Gateway Pundit, here is the display ad on an article page. If we look in the right-hand corner, it doesn't have a name. So this is common. With display ads, it doesn't have a name, but there is often this small kind of blue triangle. So you see the X, which is to close the ad, and then you see the triangle on its side. That is something that we can click on. And if we click on that, it tells us that this ad was placed by Google. So again, if it is a programmatic ad, an automatically placed ad, in the right-hand corner of a display ad, you will see the triangle. You can click on that and it will tell you the ad network who placed it. In this example, it was an ad that was placed by Google. And you will see other types of ad networks, but Google is the most important. It's the most important because it's the biggest in the world. It works with the most websites, the most apps, but also Google works its ad network in the most countries of any other ad network. And Google is in, I think, over 200 countries with AdSense, So even if you are in a smaller country in the Americas, there is a very good chance that Google's ad network is able to work with websites in your country. And it's maybe in some cases, in some countries, the only ad network that people can work with. And on top of that, Google tends to pay more money. So sites want to work with Google. It's available to them, and it's also a chance to make even more money. Okay, so we talked about display ads. We talked about content ads, how we can identify those in the upper right-hand corner. That's my dad, by the way, everybody. He's been visiting for a week, and he's about to take an Uber to the airport. So let's talk about sponsored content and affiliate ads. So affiliate advertising may be new to you, but it's a very old model. With affiliate advertising, there's a product that someone is trying to sell, and you help them sell it and earn a commission for doing that. The way this works on websites is the website will help promote the product, maybe with ads or maybe with articles. And if people click on the link to go buy this product, maybe it's, a health product or, some other type of equipment, then the website is going to earn a percentage or a fee for that sale. So maybe the product that you buy costs $30. Maybe the website's going to earn $5 or $10 of that total amount. So the website is helping sell a product and earning a commission for it. And affiliate marketing is a very big industry, and it's often used to sell very shady products. So again, keep your antenna up for health products that are being promoted by websites where they might be earning some money. And then sponsored content, as I mentioned before, is kind of the traditional advertorial where it looks like an article and it's written up and it appears on the website like an article, but it should be labeled sponsored or as an advertisement. And the thing that matters to us as investigators, as we look at these things, is that in order for the website to earn a commission from a sale, or for the website to have a sponsored content placement, there has to be a direct relationship. The website publisher has to talk to, the person selling that product to work out their agreement. They have to talk to, the company or the product who wants the sponsored content to make that deal. So this is more of a direct relationship between the thing being sold and the publisher, where when we deal with content ads and display ads, there is this in between, this intermediary like Google that's creating the sale. And so that's an important difference, right? Google is placing the ads for display and content ads and playing a big role. With affiliate and sponsored content, it is direct between the publisher and the product. So here's our friends at Gateway Pundit again. I've highlighted on this page an article that looks exactly like an article, but you can see that there is a little bit of a label that says sponsored, right? So this is something you will look for. Are they clearly labeling sponsored content? Or even more interestingly, does there appear to be sponsored content that is not labeled? And that is something that you would want to notice. So let's look at the sponsored article. Again, it looks just like a normal article on the page. The difference is that the author name is promoted post. So this is, again, a way that they are trying to disclose that this has been paid for. And what's interesting about this sponsored article is that it is a sponsored article for a product, a Trump silver coin. And so they're selling it. But if we look more closely at this sponsored article, we can see that it also has an affiliate marketing element to it. So on the article itself, it says, paste this link into your web browser to buy it. And if we look at the link, the thing that I notice is at the very end, it says AFF equals 13. So you look at the whole URL, and at the end of it, it has this special code. And that is an affiliate code. That means that the Gateway Pundit is affiliate number 13 for this coin company. And if you were to purchase this coin, the Gateway Pundit is going to earn some money. And So affiliate codes, won't always say AFF. It may say, affiliate ID. It may say client ID. But if you pay attention to the URL, if you click on it to go purchase a product, there may be some kind of a unique identifier that would be linked from the website to the product. And affiliate marketing is, relatively common. It's not as common as display advertising and content ads for disinformation websites and some of the other models. But even just being aware of this kind of commission-based relationship can be very helpful. And it's something that as you make your pitches and those are looked at to keep in mind. So another example from the Americas here for membership, there's a pretty notorious website in Brazil. And this site has Google Ads, but they also have a paid premium membership model. And so one of the reasons why disinformation sites have started launching membership models is that they know that there is attention from fact checkers. They know that sometimes if they're publishing false information on a regular basis, they run the risk of Google or other advertising networks removing ads and potentially permanently kicking them out of the ad network. And so they want to diversify. They want to have a direct revenue relationship, just like every publisher does, right, with their audience. And so this is something that is something that I see more and more common. And there's usually an offer that you get exclusive content, as you can see here on these offers here, and also a pitch saying, "Hey, show us that you support us and you love us. Be a member." And another way that disinformation websites tend to solicit money is to just ask for donations. So the website that published that climate change denial article, onescandal.com in French, they on every single article and on their homepage and everywhere else, they have a donation button. And so it's important to pay attention to which payment provider they're using. In this case, it's PayPal, but there are different donation services. And so you should take note of who they are working with, just like who are the advertising networks they're working with, who are the donation providers, payment processors they're working with. Maybe at some point in your investigation, you're going to need to contact them and say, "Hey, this website that you are facilitating payments for has published all of these things, and is this in line with your rules?" Right? So one of the other things to keep in mind for donation, in addition to the payment processor, you should pay attention to if there is additional information released or given to people if they're going to donate. So if you click, in this case, on the donation button, this is the page that you get brought to. So you are brought to a page where the PayPal option here says donate to Elishan. Okay, and so now we have a name. Is this a person? Is this a company? Sometimes there is an email address, and you want to gather all the possible contacts and email addresses that you can have. And so if you do that and you click on the donation link, maybe you can find other connected websites or other information about the people behind it. And in this case, if we Google Elishan, we find another website. Elishan777.com has lots of kind of conspiracy theories and paranormal content. And we can see that this site also has a donation button, and the donation button goes to the same name, Elishan. So through the donation button on one website, we were able to find another website and then look at the donation button there and confirm that they appear to be run by the same people. So connecting websites together by donation, by advertising relationships, this is one way for you to start to build out the network of things that you're investigating. Okay, so last couple ones we'll look at here before our case study is e-commerce. It is very common, as I said, for websites, particularly health disinformation websites, to have their own little online store and to, in some cases, have that be their main revenue stream. Alex Jones, the kind of famous American disinformation agent, his business really is not about advertising. It's about selling products, weight loss products, male virility and testosterone enhancer products, and survival equipment for the end of the world and that kind of thing. And he makes millions and millions of dollars all from e-commerce. So does the entity that you're investigating have an e-commerce store? Is it one that they are running, or are they doing the affiliate model? What kinds of products are being sold? Are any of them potentially concerning? Where are these products coming from? Are they selling their own brand name products, or are they getting them from someone else? So there's a lot of interesting avenues for investigation on the e-commerce side of it. And as is the case with the advertising networks and the case with the donations, you want to pay attention to see who are they working with. Who is providing this e-commerce store? Is it Shopify or another big e-commerce platform, or are they actually using, Facebook or Google to sell their products? So those are some of the things to keep in mind with e-commerce. And then the last one here is that, this challenge of the undisclosed funders. And actually, let me just mute myself for one moment. I need to let my dad know his. All right, folks, I'm back. So the undisclosed funder puzzle is really challenging, but one of the ways we can start to figure out if the site seems to have potentially an undisclosed revenue source is to think about the mismatch. So let's say it's a site, they produce a lot of content, they have a lot of videos on YouTube, but there's no ads on the site, and there's no other revenue streams that you can see of. Or the revenue streams that exist don't seem to support the number of people that they have working and the amount of content they produce. So that mismatch between the output and the resources they seem to have, with a lack of obvious funding sources, may be an indicator that they're getting the money in a more secretive way, okay? And so that's one of the warning signs you can look for. One of the ways to start to understand a site's true funding model and how much money it's actually making, of course, is to find ways of talking to people and find ways of getting documents from the organization itself. So are there former employees that you can identify and see if they'll speak to? Are there people who used to be an employee who is now speaking out against the kind of content that they are publishing? Is there someone who is still a true believer, but maybe they had a falling out personally or financially with the folks running it? These are the kinds of people who might be willing to talk. And these are the kinds of people that you should be seeking out. And then on top of that, of course, and I know it's different from one country to the next, but can you look in corporate records to see who is listed as the corporate entity, who are the owners? Does your country require a certain amount of financial disclosure in terms of how much revenue the company is earning each month, each quarter, each year? So those are some of the things to think about when we're talking about finding these undisclosed sources of revenue. And the key thing first is to understand what some of the signs might be that this is happening, but also, of course, as part of your investigation, to cultivate human sources to get inside that organization. Don't just look at what's on the website and what's there. There's great avenues for investigation, but also, of course, you've got to try and find and talk to people. Okay, so let's put some of this into practice, all right? Let's talk about a story and let's figure out how we identify the ads, we identify who is providing them, and also, figure out what kinds of ads are appearing, and also, get some accountability from the ad partners. So we'll do this case study, and then of course, we'll be happy to take some questions. Okay. So if you're not familiar with Steve Bannon, he was an advisor to Donald Trump, and he has said a lot of extremist things over the years. And he runs a website and a video podcast called War Room. Okay, he got into trouble with Google about a couple of years ago when he called for the deaths of some prominent people in the United States, and that got him kicked off of YouTube. But one of the things that we noticed when we went to the War Room website was that it seemed like there was still a relationship with Google happening. And so we wanted to figure out what was going on. Here's the thing that we noticed and we wanted to try to understand better. So when we would go to the website, there would be, on the bottom there, you see the War Room logo. On this show, they talk about lots of vaccine conspiracy theories, lots of crazy stuff that no advertiser would really want to be around. And so, not surprisingly, there were no ads in the War Room broadcast itself. But on top of the War Room video, you can see here this box that I have highlighted, labeled with sponsored content. And it was a video player. And it would play this kind of very, innocuous, very simple, easygoing content like how to protect your phone in cold weather. And it would play these really simple, low quality videos. And then there would be lots and lots of ads. And there would be ads from big brands. And so it seemed to us that Steve Bannon had found a sneaky loophole where he could put up content that isn't the stuff that he publishes, content that is advertiser friendly, and get lots of ads on a website that overall has a lot of crazy content. And so it seemed to us that he was finding a way, after Google had sort of kicked him off YouTube, after Google had removed ads from a lot of his pages with his worst content, he had found a way to make money from video ads. And video ads pay more than your traditional kind of display ad. So not only was he able to make money, he was able to make a money from a top kind of revenue type of ad. And so it seemed that this strategy here was finding a sneaky way to earn money. And here again is like, this combination of conspiratorial content and discussions with on the top of it, it might say, have you made these LinkedIn mistakes? Are you doing shopping online? Here are some things to know about. So content that is completely different from what's actually on the website, but stuff that advertisers are very happy to be around. And what kind of advertisers? Well, Harvard was advertising on War Room. Again, I had a colleague working with me on this. He was based in our Washington office. He viewed the website and he got an ad for Harvard because apparently Harvard thinks he wants to do some continuing education. We also got served an ad for Adobe, huge software company. We got an ad from Google. Google itself showed us an ad as we were looking on the War Room website, adding, an ad there for the Chromebook. And so clearly, there were ads coming from big brands. We thought there was a sneaky strategy, but we had to really figure out, can we nail this down? Can we prove it? Okay. So how do we get to the way of seeing who's doing this? Now, with video ads, you can't just look in the upper right-hand corner and see which ad network it is. And so what we needed to do was look at the file on the War Room website that declares the advertising partners that it has. So there is an industry standard for digital ads, where if you are accepting display ads, if you are accepting these automatically placed ads, you as a publisher are supposed to have a file on your website where you list the different advertising networks you work with. And so that file is called ads.txt. And so in this case, it's located at warroom.org/ads.txt. Okay. And so if you are looking at a website, you can go to that website's address /ads.txt. This is something that you can test out and try right now if you want, okay? And so that will list a whole bunch of information. I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. And the thing to know is that we are most interested in the things that are labeled as direct. So there is the name of the ad network. There is the unique ID that this particular publisher has with the ad network. which is helpful to us. And then it also has to have a word describing the relationship. And we care about direct relationships because that means that Google and War Room are working directly together to get ads on it, okay? So here is what warroom.org's current ads.txt file looks like right now. And so we can see here, it's got a whole bunch of records. At the very top, it says google.com, comma, hub-735 and a whole bunch of other numbers. That is the unique ID for that Google Ads account. And it says reseller. So it's saying, oh, you know, we don't work directly with Google. We work with somebody else that works with Google. And this is very common. It's a very complicated world in digital advertising. But the thing that you need to know is when it says direct, that is the most interesting thing. And today, War Room's ads.txt file looks like this. It does not list a direct relationship with Google. But when we looked at it a year ago, it did. Before our story ran, they had direct relationships with Google, and that has since changed. And so when we looked at it a year ago, we could see that there were Google IDs, those publisher IDs, pub dash, and a series of numbers that listed them as direct. So we believe that those video ads could possibly be coming from Google, but we needed to prove it. And so, so we took a couple approaches to that. One, we talked to experts in advertising, and if you are lucky to get your project approved, obviously I'm going to be available to help you, but I also know other people who are far more technical and are able to examine, you know, the traffic going between a particular ad unit and an ad network. And they helped us determine that, yes, this video player was actually using Google to make money. And we also were able to see that Google advertising technology was on the website. So here is the second thing that you should really be aware of. Number one, manually visiting a website and looking at the ads can start to tell you some of the advertising relationships that are there. Number two, if you look at the ads.txt file, you could see who the publisher declares, says themselves who they are working with. So manual observation, ads.txt, we start to put the pieces together. And the third thing I want to show you are two free tools that are very user-friendly and not technical, which will tell you the kinds of advertising technology present on the site. So the first one is called the Ghostery plugin, and I put the link to it there on this slide. And if you click on that when you're on a website, you'll see it's showing you the different types of advertising technology that exist on the website. So in this case, we can see it's listing Google AdSense, and it's telling us that it sees activity with Google taking place on the website. And we can also see it identified Market Grid, Market GID, which is a content advertising network, MGID. And this is another one that was present on the website. So we can look, we can read ads.txt, and we can use Ghostery to see that, yes, there really does seem to be strong evidence here of a relationship with Google, and in this case, with MGID. The second tool, which is a good starting point for you if you want to just start wading into this and understanding more, is called Blacklight. And this is from a newsroom in the United States called The Markup. You can simply enter in the address of the website, it will scan it, and it will tell you the different types of advertising partners that are on the website. It will also tell you if the website uses technology from Facebook to identify, link you visiting that website to your Facebook account. And the thing that really stood out to me most recently when I reran War Room here in Blacklight is that you can see that one of the things Blacklight identifies is whether the website can actually capture the things you type on the website. And so in this case, it says that War Room will, if you search and things like that, it is capturing your keystrokes. It will capture the things you're typing while you're on the website, which is potentially a very big privacy risk. And here we were able to discover it simply by using this tool. So use Ghostery, that's a browser plugin. Blacklight is a tool you can go and just put in the website address. Start to use these to familiarize yourself with the kinds of technology and functionality that is on these disinformation websites you're interested in. Start to use them, start to look at ads.txt files, and you will start to understand more about this universe. And it does take time and take practice. This may seem complicated right now, but using these tools and scanning the sites that you are looking at as part of your regular work is the best way to start. And of course, Blacklight also tells us that the website is working with Google. So all of this evidence starts to mount and starts to pile up. And we are able to identify the ads through seeing this video player and thinking that it's probably Google. We are able to check its ads.txt and see direct Google records. We are able to use Ghostery and Blacklight to see the ad technology on the site. It includes Google. And then, of course, we talk to experts who can see on the more technical basis that, yes, it does appear that this video player is working with Google. And so from there, of course, we need to reach out and get comment. We contacted Google, we contacted War Room. I won't keep you in suspense. War Room never responded to us in any way, shape, or form. Google did, and Google confirmed that yes, we are placing ads in this video player. And Google also said, none of this breaks our rules. The content is fine. We don't see an issue here. And so, Google has in the past removed ads from specific pages on warroom.org, but it is allowing, or it was at that time, allowing these video ads to run in this very kind of, user-friendly, advertiser-friendly content on the homepage. And this was we assume, a pretty good revenue stream for War Room. Recently, I visited the site. It does not seem to be doing this anymore. It did remove the video player not too long after our story. It reappeared at sometimes, and it seems to be gone again now. But you can see here that even though Google itself didn't see this as breaking the rules, just the fact that we raised this issue with Google and with War Room played a role in getting these ads removed from the website. So scrutiny and asking questions and being able to identify ads and ad partners can absolutely have results, okay? And so we saw that in this case, and we saw some progress that happened as a result of it. And by the way, as I've said to you before, the advertisers, Harvard, Adobe, Google, we contacted all of them and we said, hey, here's a screenshot of your ad on this website from an extremist. Did you intend to place your ad here? And in every case, they said, no, we did not intend to place our ads here. This was an error, is what one told us. And in other cases, they blamed their partners. They blamed basically Google or other ad partners they use to get their ads placed. And so all of them had said this wasn't supposed to happen. We're looking into it. We'll prevent it from happening again. But the truth is, because of this system with the automated buying and selling, advertisers may be buying literally billions or trillions of ads every year. That's how many ads get placed, right? By one big advertiser. And so they do not track where they all show up. And in your countries, you will absolutely find cases of government ads or big brand ads showing up on disinformation websites. And these brands and government entities will have no idea that was going on. So that is something that you can look to try and do. So let's wrap up here because I'm eager to hear your questions. I'm sure there's some things that you might want me to repeat, and that's totally fine. Also, please know these slides are going to be available to you. So you can come back to them, you can consult them. You don't have to worry about memorizing everything that's, and we're going to provide you support to dig in more in this area. And so I want to leave you with some of the questions that you may want to be asking as you start to embark on your investigations. So if we're trying to follow the money for sources of disinformation, what are some of the questions that we want to be asking? Well, of course, we start with, how does this person or this publisher or this website earn money? Are there ads present? Are they doing e-commerce? Do they seem to not have any funding sources, but are able to produce a huge amount of content? So what is possible? And who are their partners? Can we identify ad networks they work with? Can we identify advertisers they have a direct relationship with? And so distinguishing the direct relationships versus ones with intermediaries is important. In the Steve Bannon example, Steve Bannon and Harvard do not have a direct relationship. Steve Bannon and Google had a direct relationship. And because of that, Harvard's relationships with Google meant Harvard ended up giving money to Steve Bannon. Direct versus intermediary. Important thing to try and understand and distinguish. One of the other things that I mentioned with payment processors is important to understand is of the partners that this site works with. So e-commerce site partner, payment processing partner, advertising network partners, what are their policies? Do they have strict policies of not working with people who spread health disinformation or COVID disinformation? And if that's the case, then potentially there's a clear violation there. Think about, are they being sneaky or trying to conceal what they're doing? What kinds of products might they be selling or promoting, and are those worth investigation as well? Think about not just the website. Emails can have ads in them. Emails are often used to sell products. So sign up for email newsletters. On their social media accounts, are they, promoting products there, trying to sell them? Are they, doing sponsored social media posts that someone might be paying them for? So we want to look not just at the website, even though that's usually the heart of the monetization. Think about those other accounts. And then also, and this may be part of your pitch, your proposal, but are there trends? Can we look across regions or countries and see that, everyone is working with Google, or everyone is working with Taboola. Everyone is selling this product, right? Understanding the trends for not just one website and its social media accounts, but thinking about the larger ecosystem, because it's far more powerful and convincing to be going to Google, with 15 websites, all of which are making money with it, saying you are the biggest disinformation funder in our region because you are working with all of these sites. That becomes more powerful. And that can also be more powerful when you go to donation platforms, when you go to e-commerce platforms as well. Okay, so we have gone through my presentation. I know there are lots of questions and I'm eager to get to those. So, Laura, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. If you wanna come back in with me and let me know what I can do to help people, let's get it going.
Perfecto. Primero, muchísimas gracias porque estamos perfectamente en tiempo.
First off, thank you. Perfect timing. We are right on schedule. Thank you, Craig, for that. And thank you to all of the many people who asked us questions. We have many more questions. I think we hope we'll get to maybe 30 or 40 questions in the time we have left. I will present the questions to you and I'll ask you, I understand that you're listening to me in English, so I'll hear your answers. And the more questions we can answer, the better we'll all be off, the better for all of us. A first question might be a question that we got from Victor Amaya some time ago. Were you able to identify state funding for disinformation? In the description that you gave, did you also find funding, public or government funding sources for disinformation?
So there absolutely are examples where state money has gone to disinformation sources. One of the ones that comes to mind right away, and is one that is very easy to identify, is that in Brazil, the Bolsonaro government was at times directing state advertising funds to his sort of preferred media outlets. And so one way that you can sort of think about that state part of it is that governments do a lot of advertising. In some cases, for example, if there's a new law being proposed, they have to publish the text of it. In some cases, and it used to be in newspapers, But today, sometimes you're able to actually see if there are state ads running on these types of sites. And that would be something that you could identify by visiting and looking at them. So that's one example of looking at it. Second example, which I'll also mention for Brazil, is during the pandemic, there were a lot of countries that obviously created funding programs to help people who had lost their jobs, people who couldn't pay employees. And so it was certainly the case in Brazil, where you would have, in fact, the website I listed there, Terra Brasil Noticias, the couple running that received government sort of, funding during the pandemic. So those are two examples that are the easier ones to identify. One, can you identify, government ads and our government advertising funds being directed to these types of sites? And that would be the evidence you see on the site itself. And then the second part of it would be, can you develop sources or reach out to the relevant government departments and see if they can confirm that yes, we have, as part of our advertising purchases, this is now part of them. And then the second is, are there government databases you can look in to see if the people running these sites have received loans, have received grants, or other kinds of specialized programs. And so, those are sort of the harder ones. Those are the easier ones to identify. In some cases, the state may give funding to a company, and then that company decides to then, purchase its own ads on the site. And those are much harder to uncover, and they require spending time developing, human sources and getting documentation.
Sobre este punto particular, mañana en la clase de Janina.
On this particular point, in tomorrow's class by Janina, there will be a specific effort to identify public funding sources and to unmask this articulation specifically. There's another question that I thought was very interesting to share and to ask. All of them are interesting, but one from Jose Luis says, have you discovered funding by drug traffickers? Have you discovered links to drug traffickers in these disinformation campaigns?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, the short answer for me is no. And I haven't necessarily made a priority to kind of look for drug traffickers, but I can say generally that I have an operating assumption. So I have spent 5 years doing reporting on digital advertising, and it is so filled with fraud and corruption, okay? That if you are an organized crime entity, if you are drug traffickers, if you are, mafiosos or what have you, to me, it would be incredible to think that they have not identified a business opportunity in digital advertising. And so I have not documented that link, but I think that there is a lot to be found about connections between organized crime in the Americas and digital advertising. And so that is one area that I would be extremely interested in helping anyone who is trying to dig into that, because there is so much money to be made from digital advertising, and there are lots of really shady characters involved in it, that I would think there is a lot of appeal for drug traffickers or other people, potentially as a money laundering opportunity or other things.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Una pregunta de Eman.
Perfect, excellent. A question from Eman. The question is Blacklist a website or is it a software? Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so Blacklight is a website that you can go to in order
Sí, sorry,
to...
dije Blacklist,
yeah.
Blacklight, sorry.
Oh, it's Blacklist, not Blacklight? Okay.
No, it is Blacklight, not Blacklist.
Okay.
I said
Okay,
it.
cool.
I wrong, and I didn't know if the translator did it well.
That's okay, I got it. So yes, Blacklight it's one of the tools that I showed, and it's a website that you can go to. And actually, I'm gonna drop the link into the chat so that everybody can have it. And it's really simple, because you can go to this website and then you can just enter in the address, the URL of the website that you are interested in, and it will run this scan for you. So there it is in the chat. It takes a minute or two for it to run. And obviously the results are in English. So if that's a barrier, just keep that in mind. But that's where you can go to use that. And I think it's a very good tool to start familiarizing yourself with the kinds of advertising technology and partners that a website might have.
Perfecto. Otra pregunta que nos hacen o que te hacen es si crees que ahora
Another question has to do with you feel that now they are, sorry if I'll have to ask her to repeat.
Oh, I think they need you to repeat the question.
si crees o si
Do you believe or do you know about if they are, this information is being financed by using Bitcoins as well? Do you know anything about that?
So Bitcoin, it's a good question to ask. One of the things that I think has been made clear and documented is that certainly disinformation operators have solicited donations by Bitcoin. So you may see on the website or social media of your investigation targets that they list actually an address for their Bitcoin wallet. And so, for example, Alex Jones, who I mentioned briefly in the presentation, he's in a huge amount of legal trouble. And somebody donated millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin to him to help him. And so there has been great work in the United States to try and trace where these Bitcoins came from. And nobody actually knows yet. So pay attention to Bitcoin if they list a wallet on their website. If there is a Bitcoin wallet listed that is connected to, the person or the entity you're interested in, there are ways of tracing the transactions to that wallet. So we may not know exactly who is giving money, but we can know how much money has gone into that wallet over time, which will give us a sense of the amount of money they've gotten from Bitcoin. So it's certainly worth looking into.
Perfecto. Vamos con otra. Una que hace Benjamín Morales.
Another question by Benjamin Morales. He asks you if you believe that this is something organized in all levels, or if there are actions, spontaneous actions that ended up coordinating themselves. So do you believe there is any kind or any organization beyond the misinformation, offensive, or do you believe there are many networks going on at the same time? They, once they are born, they start to articulate themselves.
Yeah, so there's definitely different scenarios, but on the last part of the question, it's absolutely the case that people may start out separately. They may have their own agendas, but over time, they naturally identify who is similar to them, who is publishing the same kind of content, who is supporting the same political party or what have you. And they do start to build a network. And so it happens kind of naturally. And that is a dynamic that will take place. If we think about the pandemic, you had a lot of different groups. You had sort of anti-government groups, and you had existing anti-vaccine groups, and you had, people who were, maybe climate change denialists who were very science skeptical or hostile. As the pandemic went on, these separate groups who maybe never had connections before, suddenly they had a common kind of interest. And so it can happen naturally. Now, coordination and a conscious kind of organization and funding can happen as well. One of the most common would be, of course, from a political organization or political candidates' machines. So, they want to make sure that they have, lots of favorable content being published. They want to make sure that they have influencers and people on YouTube. And so in some cases, as was the case in the Philippines, with Duterte, they will go out and someone close to or affiliated with the campaign will find money and start to use it to support existing people who support, but also to fund additional people to support it. And so you can absolutely have cases where there is a coordinated and organized effort to create the impression of support, to create the impression of a groundswell of interest. but all of it traces back to a small group of people or the same funding source. And the way that we start to understand which is coordinated and organized and which is kind of natural is, by one, identifying the network. What are the websites? What are the social media accounts? What are the similar content and behavior across all of them? And then two, trying to see if there is clear, obvious example of coordination or shared funding. Do they all have the same advertising IDs on their websites? Well, that would mean the money is going to the same place. Do they all post the same content in coordination? Are there corporate records that show connections between the people? So those are the things that as we build out our investigation, we want to start connecting the dots.
Perfecto. Otras dos más específicas de algunas cuestiones que
Another
planteas.
two specific questions. Juan Lozada asks you about what does reseller mean, in the text, the TXT file. He's asked, how should they understand reseller? And then I will add another question about the requirements, if you have that on the top of your mind, of a web page to have automatic ads. Is there a minimum visitation number they should have?
Yeah, so let me take the second question first. In order to get these automated programmatic ads, do you need to have a minimum amount of visitors? And so, the sort of unsatisfying answer is it depends. The more visitors you have, the more advertising networks are very eager and excited to have you. And so for them, keep in mind, their interest is, they want to sell as many ads as possible. And if there's ever a time where, they don't have enough ad space to sell, then Google loses money or Taboola loses money. And so they want to grow their network. They want to have more publishers in there so that they could fulfill the demand of ad buyers at any time. And so some ad networks do have minimum requirements for traffic and some don't. In some of the smaller countries in the Americas, it's probably less likely that there is a minimum amount of traffic because, again, Google probably doesn't have a lot of partners in, Bolivia, for example. And so if it can get more and more websites and more ads space to sell, it has the potential to earn more money. So it's different between ad networks. Each ad network has its own methodology for evaluating a publisher and deciding whether to accept them. Some are going to be more strict. Some are going to accept anybody who comes to them. Google tends to be a little more strict than Taboola and Outbrain and MGID. Okay, so second question, talking about ads.txt files. And I understand that, this is probably a brand new thing for a lot of you and you're trying to get your heads around it. And honestly, it is complicated. So don't feel bad if you're sort of like, okay, I don't know what's going on here yet. And so, as I mentioned, we're most interested in that file of, the advertising ID that is labeled as direct, right? And this question is great because it asks, okay, so yes, direct is most important. That's good. But what about reseller? What does that mean? And so that is the other common label you see. So direct means that me, CraigSilverman.com, I have signed up with Google and I've got ads from Google on my website. And every month, Google is depositing money in my bank account from the ads on my website. We have a direct relationship. They are putting ads on my website. Now, if there is a reseller relationship with Google, it means that me, Craig Silverman, I have a relationship with another company, and that company has a relationship with Google. And so, here's a common example of that. So maybe in my country, there's a company that works with a lot of publishers to help them earn money from advertising. It's kind of like an agency. And so maybe I sign up with them and they're going to help get the ads on my site and they're going to handle all the technical details, but they're going to get a percentage of my revenue. And so that partner that I sign up with, they're the ones who have the relationship with Google. And so they have the Google ID and they are reselling my content, reselling my ad space. So it means that, with reseller, it does mean that ads from that ad network can show up on the website. It just does not mean that that website, and in this case, Google, have a direct relationship where Google is paying me. It means Google is paying someone else and that person is paying me. And these relationships can get very complicated. Not to confuse you more, but you can actually see a Google ad placed through Taboola, which is crazy. So you can see relationships between ad networks, between companies that represent publishers, and it can become a very complicated space. And that complication and the technical nature of it is one of the ways that the bad actors are able to keep earning money, because it's so complicated that the average person, the average journalist, doesn't know how to untangle and figure out, wait, who is paying who and where are these ads coming from? And I think the more journalists who are able to understand this stuff and help untangle it and help have accountability, the better the entire publishing ecosystem is going to be. And so to me, that's the promise of this project, and being able to do it across all of the Americas.
Genial, tenemos poco tiempo, pero tengo dos más que seguro quiero hacerte. Una solo para reconfirmarle a Laura.
We do have another question. Laura Rodriguez asked you about if you have identified financing from communication agencies, and I do believe you have just answered that, but just checking, please. And the second question that Leticia has sent you, is there an ad blocker? The ad blocker could block the sponsored content, or maybe that's not the case, and so if you can see the ads and the sponsored content.
Okay, good questions. Yes, so on the first one, yes, there are absolutely cases where there are communication firms, PR firms, who are kind of the arm's length entity who are actually doing, the placing of ads or the placing of sponsored content. This is the most common during elections, where political campaigns, are going to funnel some money to certain agencies to have the deniability, right? So instead of the campaign going and paying you to publish nice things about the candidate, the campaign has a guy who goes and gives money to a PR agency, and the PR agency pays influencers to post. They pay for sponsored content. And this has become very entrenched in the political process in some countries. In the Philippines today, in the elections, there are big PR agencies that will actually have a special elections menu of services that includes, oh, do you want trolls? Do you want bots? Do you want us to, secretly pay influencers to act like they're endorsing you, but not tell their audience that they're paid to say nice things about you?
Mañana Janina también va a retomar algo de eso con un ejemplo.
Yeah, tomorrow Janina will bring us some of those topics back.
Beautiful. And then so on the second part of it, ad blockers, a very good question. So, I have two ad blockers that I always have on when I'm browsing, but it is a very, very good question in that when you are doing these investigations, you should absolutely turn off your ad blocker when you visit these sites, because it will remove display ads. It will remove some, but sometimes not all content ads. And possibly it might remove some sponsored content, but sponsored content is probably the likeliest to stay and not be blocked by an ad blocker. So when you do these investigations, turn off your ad blockers as you visit the websites, and you'll be able to see more ads. And again, remember that you are being shown certain types of ads. So think about your colleagues and other people, your family members, people with different online profiles, have them visit these things as well to see what kinds of ads they get shown.
Perfecto. Hay muchísimas más preguntas a los participantes.
Perfect.
Que no
There are many, many other questions from our audience that we didn't have time to answer. We have the next program, so I apologize to those who asked questions who we were not able to answer. Thank you, Craig, so much. And there's now a quick message by Renata from ICFJ, and Renata will give us some instructions on a survey. Thank you, Craig. I'm sure this is a conversation that will continue, and thank you for allowing us to go deeper and to continue working to improve our skills and our effort at work. And this will, I'm sure, lead to newer, better questions from our participants as our project and this masterclass series develops. Thank you. Renata.
Let me just quickly say, it's a thrill to be part of this. It will continue. I'm excited to work with you folks on your proposals, and I'm very grateful to the translators. I know I often speak very quickly. You did an amazing job. Thank you very much, and enjoy the next session, everyone.
Gracias.
Bom dia, pessoal. Tudo bem? Então, sou Renata Salvini, sou do ICFJ.
I'm Renata Tauvini, especially in monitor, evaluation, and learning. We have a 3-year program, and it's a very important issue for this moment. That's why we are making an effort to make sure that we have a powerful impact, and you're here to learn how to fight disinformation. And I am learning from your feedback how to evolve in this issue. Please, I'm going to ask you to scan a QR code that you will see on the screen. I am going to copy it in my link. It will take only 2 minutes. It's anonymous. You are not going to let me do any fake news. I count on you. 2 minutes. And then we'll put it on the chat. If you have any doubts, just tell me. We're going to do an assessment after each session. This is an assessment of Craig's session.
Bueno, si Renata cree que estamos bien, hay varios que dijeron done, así que
All right, several of you have answered that we are done, so I think we will give you 10 minutes of a break between this session and Patricia's session, who is already ready, and we're grateful to have her with us, so you can stretch, get up from your chair, go to the bathroom if you need to. Do not disconnect. We'll be back and we'll meet up again. Okay.
seguimos en el mismo link, por si alguno no llegó a irme.
We will continue in the main link. If somebody did not hear that, you do not need to re-log in. We will remain.
Hola a todos otra vez. Gracias a los casi 200 que ya completaron la evaluación. Les pido a quienes no lo hicieron que lo hagan. Nos ayudan un montón, en serio, dándonos feedback.
Guys, for answering the survey. And I just like to tell you that Patricia Campos Melo is going to carry out her presentation in Portuguese. So if you need a simultaneous interpretation, you can choose the channel of the language you feel most comfortable with. So the second master class is being presented by Patricia Campos Melo. She is one of the journalists that I highly admire. She's a reporter at large. She's a columnist at Folha de São Paulo newspaper, and she works with human rights, economic topics, and other issues. But the main reason she's here is that because for a long time, she has been working on investigating organized associations that articulate themselves through platforms and WhatsApp groups and how they work with their disinformation. So, Patricia, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Antes de dejarte a estos increíbles
Before I pass the floor to you and get ready, I should tell you, brace yourself because the questions are really highly interesting. So you'll have 45 minutes for your conference, and then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A session, and then I will be asking the questions and you're going to be answering them, and you can use the simultaneous interpretation mode. And here we have a ping pong, mountain or beach. Beach.
Comida preferida.
What's your favorite food? Indian food. Tea or coffee? Coffee. Which is your favorite city in the Americas? In the Americas, let me think. Lima. Perfect. You cat or dog? Dog or cat? Dog. And who is going to be the next world champion? This is a tricky question.
I am going to say Brazil.
Bueno, todo tuyo. Te escuchamos.
The floor is yours. You can share your screen and it's your turn.
Let me thank Laura, Krista D'Aguila, Rosenthal, and everybody. It's wonderful to be able to be here, and it's really great responsibility after Craig's brilliant presentation. I think what we've done, it's really big shoes to fill. I am going to share my screen with you. I want to talk about research and disinformation in the last 5 years, the way this was done, what were the tools, how we worked. I think maybe it'd be more useful. And I'll talk from the point of view of a journalist. Let me share my screen with you. Can you see my screen? Yes. I have to put it in the presentation mode. Yeah, we can see it perfectly. Yes. I am a journalist. I work in Folha de São Paulo and several newspapers, and I covered international news, migrations, and because I was covering elections in the world, India, the US, I started to look at the social media and the use of the voters' data in these campaigns. And this is how I got to get into this field. It wasn't exactly what I was doing, but I started talking about disinformation as a political weapon, and it's really fascinating. Before the elections in 2008, I had covered the Indian elections in India. Very interesting because we had Narendra Modi, who were pioneers in the use of WhatsApp and the direction of messages. And he was one of the leaders and populist. And in 2016, the US election, when there was an epiphany where people started to realize things were not going so well, people's data were being used. In 2018, we had the presidential election in Brazil. And in Brazil, for the Global South, WhatsApp is really the main communication tool for many countries. Brazil is the second largest WhatsApp market. India is the first. And there's another factor, which we call zero rating. There are many prepaid systems, so they're not part of your data package, and people use WhatsApp for everything. And they use it for political disinformation. From 2018 to this, to the present, Telegraph also grew a lot. The platforms don't tell you what their number of users is, but the most recent research, 98% of smartphones in Brazil have WhatsApp, and 60% have Telegram. In 2018, it was 15%. So we see how it grew, but WhatsApp dominates. In 2018, we started to see the way Bolsonaro was efficiently using these social networks. This was something that had been growing. It didn't happen from one day to the next. They started creating groups, and it had been some years since then they been doing it. And our epiphany moment, it was not really maybe a big surprise, but the volume of disinformation in 2018, and the fake news that was most known, which was this type of bottle that showed that many colleagues had been doing reports of this among groups. How did this work? And most of them share a link for people to join, or they simply add people without they having been asked to the group. Now, WhatsApp has a setting that says, I don't want to be joined into this group. But it's those configurations, your settings you never look at the beginning of the year. I have a cell phone that I use for that, to monitor groups and to see what's going on. So I was added, not having asked, to 28 groups, the Bolsonaristas groups, because my phone, because it had been joined to those groups. Then we started to see in 2018, and colleagues from BBC Brazil, Estadão, had been writing about it, and they asked me to look at the volume of the messages, and it was really something striking. What I started to see was who was that giving the service, who was paying, I started working in a very basic way, talking to people who were doing marketing. And then we started to get a list of marketing agencies, corporate agencies that were doing this. We were lucky because we wanted declarations of people who were inside the agencies. We'd been talking to people, and we did something which you probably did as well, is to go to the database of the work, to the labor tribunal, to see what the suits that were being litigated against these organizations. And we saw people that were suing these companies. We started to talk to them. So the first step was with Artur Rodriguez, who's brilliant, somebody who's brilliant and works for Folia. And we talked to these workers. Some didn't want to talk. Some others said they had nothing to add. And one of them, I am going to go forward because I stopped going forward with my slides. One of the workers told me that in his process, he had pictures, exchange of messages, Excel spreadsheets, and we discovered that all these agencies sent disinformation in en masse. They have a WhatsApp with all the messages that you want to use. It's really basic. You have SIM cards, or you get the phones connected to computers, and you started sending messages everywhere. Who do you send it to? One, for you to register your chip, you had several parallel markets that were being used for the operation to work. They bought lists of people with their IDs, with their taxpayer ID. In a specific agency, they had all older people, names that they bought. It's not difficult to do. Nowadays, it's a little bit more difficult because there's a law to protect data. But what they did was they used these taxpayer identifications to register their chips, their SIM cards. And who do they send the ads to? They bought from other agencies lists of voters that were segmented, saying, well, I have voters from the interior of Sao Paulo. I want women that earn so much. So they had several types of segmentation. Some we were sold if they were really exact, and I really wouldn't be able to tell you whether they were as exact as they were saying it was, but they sold it. And so you had an agency that you hired. The agency sold you a list of voters that you wanted to reach, and in the black market, you are able to buy the chips. Here, this is the amount of chips that people bought. What did they start shooting through the computers? From something very basic, which was just pictures of the candidates, disinformation and attacks against candidates. At the time, people didn't know what mass shooting was. Nobody knew. It's something we started to understand at that time, and it wasn't illegal. What was illegal was to offer a service that wasn't being registered in the electoral tribunal. So we have there's a site by the court, electoral court, where everything you can get in terms of data will be there. You will get people that suppliers for campaigns, everything that candidates spend. You can segment that and detail it. So if you don't have your details declared, it will be illegal. Another thing that was illegal was to do a negative campaign. For example, a message that was being sent was bomb. Haddad Haddad is part of the Lava Jato operation, which was a big corruption operation. So that was forbidden. You couldn't do a negative campaign. And there were false informations, like the Workers' Party is going to distribute those bottles that we saw before. So we started to study what was happening. When you bought a database, this is an agency in Minas Gerais, Croc Services. They serviced many corporations. They sold it like this. This is the phone numbers that they had in each state for you to shoot those messages with your. You can buy the database or you could buy the numbers, and that was illegal already. The UOL also prepared a note with workers. Whistleblowers were people who are always important in this type of campaign. There is a Disneyland of data for us to discover, and it helps when you have a whistleblower that helps you find it. So these UOL published campaigns, published articles. Artur and I prepared research with the person who was our whistleblower. They wanted to reach an agreement with a company, and we recorded everything he said, lots of detail, not only all the pictures, we had messages. Government campaign is starting. So we got all the messages that people were shooting. We started with that. And then we had also an article that was very interesting. Somebody who bought services, somebody working in marketing, who were hiring a marketing company in Spain, showing how these services are so difficult to control, because any candidate, any entrepreneur can sit in front of a laptop with a PayPal account, hire a company in Spain. You gave him the list you wanted to share, and nothing, and nobody knew about it. So we did that article about this agency that was being hired in Spain by Brazilian companies. And we also, the whistleblower recorded what the whole project. The other whistleblower that was interesting, after we started publishing the article, somebody called me or contact me through Twitter and said, listen, I worked in this agency. I have some information. I wanted to talk to you. I was very happy. I said, oh, okay, yeah, let's. I started to talk to him through Twitter, and then the person disappeared, didn't answer anymore. Then he came back. He would disappear, come back. And in reality, this person had worked in that agency And I kept telling him, I'm going to preserve your privacy, and there's no problem. And in 6 months, we saw that they had a lot of data, but I said, I need something that will prove that in fact, these registers of voters are being sold and they're segmented. And he had a lot of pages that were in his internet Windex machine. It's a very simple register. And when we started publishing, they started to delete a lot of stuff. It's important to know if people can in fact do that. Can you delete? We were able to find this. It was a very difficult time for me. I was in the middle of a very difficult situation because of a source that we couldn't identify. In July 2020, everything that had to do with the use of data by people, also articles that were published in the newspaper, all the work done by agencies that were checking the information, everything was done by the academic sector, by journalists. And in July, an important issue was that Facebook, after a study of the Atlantic Council of the Digital Forensics Lab, they identified some accounts that pretend to be what they are not. They pretend to publish news, they pretend to be a normal user, and really they were accounts registered and managed by an IP that was in the seat of government, in what is called the digital marketing center at the presidency. And so Facebook discovered these accounts. So it was not just that journalists, academics were discovering this type of information. A platform itself deleted accounts that were linked to the president. And what is it that they were distributing? At the time, I don't know, maybe if those who are Brazilians remember, the Minister of Justice, Sergio Mota. I am not as good as Greg is dealing with these slides. I think this is the one I need. You have 20 minutes,
You have about 20 more minutes, still have Patricia. 20 minutes. 25 minutes. 25 minutes.
Between 20 and 25 minutes. So let me not accelerate. Sergio Moro, the Ministry of Justice, had left the government because he was accusing people of interfering. And at the same time, you have these accounts from the presidents distributing disinformation against Moro, saying that he was a traitor. So many attack campaigns against the minister himself. In 2020, when we started to work in 2018, WhatsApp that didn't have a representative in Brazil, so you couldn't talk to anybody. So when you try to talk to them, it says, well, no, this is not happening. They were denying it, but the research said, well, what's happening in WhatsApp? We know now that to when you shoot ads in WhatsApp, a political ad, what you do is you hire that through an intermediate, but it goes against the rules of WhatsApp. The rules at the time, nobody knew that the rule existed, that you were not supposed to use those intermediaries. So WhatsApp in 2019 forbade this mass shooting of ads. And finally, they admitted that they had been used in an illegal fashion during the Brazilian elections, and they started suing all the agencies. So this doesn't mean that the problem disappeared. We saw a reduction in the ads but in 2020 we saw that we saw databases being sold, cell numbers, and there were candidates that were getting these lists, and we had the recordings of these candidates that were being contacted by companies that were offering this service, and they couldn't deny what they were doing because it was quite obvious. And the other thing that was interesting is that at the time, another thing we did is that they sold software. The software wasn't expensive. It was 800 reais. Two types of softwares which you could track the data of people from Facebook and Instagram. So you say, well, I am a Congress candidate. I want to do a mass shooting to degrade to talk badly about my opponent. I use a software in Instagram that allows you to get all the information and you put in your dashboard. And so they are thematic groups. One of the differences is when in 2020, the attitude of platforms was completely different because really WhatsApp it went into a nightmare of public relations. It was already a nightmare in India. When Brazil, things got better. So they needed to change the product. This time, when I talked to Facebook, they had somebody in California who specifically was scraping data to see how they could fight against it. So some things improved. This year's elections, this year we saw, was it worse? Was it better? What was the information like? Some things improved thanks to the work of the people who verify, of the authorities that did educational campaigns against disinformation, and also legislation. We started to have legislation against this. Important resolutions were issued in 2021. Disinformation against electoral integrity was banned. That is to say, you could not say that there was fraud in the election, that the elections were corrupt. That was a step forward. But there was an issue that the president supported, which was elections is a fraud. That is a macro issue, and it was really strong. That was a very big challenge. And another thing that was a challenge was the complexity of the disinformation system in 2018. It was Facebook, Twitter, but less, and WhatsApp. In 2022, much more complex. We have And 2018, there were other sites, but there was Telegram, groups in WhatsApp, groups in Telegram, profiles of the political leaders. It had many more followers. They were a poll. There was a very large universe of YouTubers from extreme rights that were disseminating this type of information. A great number of sites of junk news that they show to be impartial. It's not an ideological site. They um, are in reality sites that fabricate information, fake information, biased information, and they became very strong. We worked with Craig on that, and Jovem Pan, which was a powerful news agency, also TikTok. So it became very much more complex and more difficult to monitor. We had seen what happened in the US in 2020 at the Capitol, January 6th. So one of the things we did is map all policy changes and the moderation rules used in the US to reduce the disinformation in their own election, and what was it that they were doing in Brazil? Because these platforms, of course, were doing the same. This is a problem that we see. There's less attention being given to countries that are not English speaking. So we compared, why is it that YouTube only forbids disinformation or lies about elections in Germany or in the US, and they don't do it in Brazil? This was not forbidden by YouTube until the middle of this year. They they had issues on 2018, 2020, and only after the results in 2022. So we submitted this. We did a report showing how we could mapping all of this. And something that is very good is that there are many tools. And in 2018, there was a very interesting tool for journalists to work together with the academic sector. It was a WhatsApp monitor and a Telegram monitor that allowed you to see what was happening. This year, many universities were doing many types of monitoring. There's a company called Pulver with a great number of groups that they monitor and a dashboard that allows you to navigate easily if you want to see what's being shared, how the message is being shared, if you want to look at type of attachments, all of that helps. It's always you have a crosscut because it's a number of groups. You can only monitor public information because it's illegal to monitor private information. But for example, when we talk about junk news sites, UFRJ, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, did a research looking at the sites that were shared most often. It's very interesting to see how the feedback works in these issues. Part of the population, after some years of that the government has been saying that the traditional media is biased, communist, etc., started to get support from people that live in a parallel ecosystem of information. They are informed by these Telegram and WhatsApp groups. They are informed by the social media, by the influencers that share links from these junk news sites. So you have a vision that's repeated. You are in a bubble. You are within this universe. And one of the things we did was to see what are the sites that are shared the most by politicians and look at what they're like, to see if they are large. If they're not, the results were frightening. We use SimilarWeb, one of the ways to measure audience, and a specific license, which I think is a case study, Terra Brasil Noticias, one of the largest. This site, 3 years ago, I wrote about this. It's a couple from Rio Grande do Norte. He's a lawyer, they're conservative, and they decided to create a website that get news from the internet. They package it with a conservative perspective, and they get news that they say the press does not publish. They were anti-vaxxers, COVID issues, and they finance it with Google Ads. That's what Craig researched. In reality, the platforms, when you use these sites that are being monetized, you are financing disinformation at the same time. So it becomes very complicated. We mapped all these sites to look who was financing them, who were the people involved. And something else that's very interesting, this is part of our reality. In elections, that's what you have. Campaigns, political communication works like this. So we will have to monitor it always. There were a series of decisions, resolutions of the electoral tribunals, all the platforms themselves that forbade issues that could not be put in the platforms. Google's and Meta sold a brutal number of ads. The money amounts was incredible. And these ads have to follow rules. So people don't pay so that Google discriminates their information. If they are doing false declarations, they're forbidden to do that. But what we see is that we journalists have to be looking at that all the time, because the filters used by the platforms with artificial intelligence and others are not enough. So in Brazil, you can only start doing electoral propaganda after a certain time, but internet is not monitored. What can be done, what cannot be done is not clear in the internet. Not always does Google enforce, for example, that the taxpayer information be included. So we started to research whether rules are being complied with, platform rules or rules of moderations of the platforms themselves. Was it working, or had it become something which nobody followed? There were some that were better, some that were worse, but another things that we were able to see is monitor money. You can cross data of the electoral tribunal with data of expenditures or ads, because Google and Meta have a library of ads. They have a transparency report. Google is not as detailed. Meta is more detailed, and you're able to cross data with the electoral tribunal to see who it is that's doing things, who is it that's paying. Only the candidate can pay for an article for his propaganda. But we saw that there are many people that are paying for negative acts of one candidate against the other. So CrowdTangle allows you to monitor as well. It is a very good dashboard to see what narratives are circulating, what's happening, and something which is very important. We don't want to amplify disinformation with the illusion that we're helping. Something that's not getting traction is you start working and you start repeating, you are helping disinformation. So in these dashboards where you're looking at ads and you're looking at in libraries trying to see what it is that's happening. For example, here, CrowdTangle, a fraud in elections. We monitor that all the time. How long do I still have? Let me see. Between 5 and 10 minutes. I'm almost done. This is the dashboard of Pulver, which allows you to monitor the type of message. In these elections, we had several waves. At the beginning, a lot was said about electoral fraud. Then we had the stories of people who were declaring who they were voting for. Then we also have the Masons against Bolsonaro. So these were waves of disinformation. Sometimes it were just things that were out of context. A sentence is being used to give a context, but the context was different. So we started to monitor how these waves started to grow to understand the origin. An interesting thing is if when we do an autopsy of disinformation, is saying the Workers' Party is going to close the churches in Brazil. In June, when Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua started to close down churches and repression against the religion. And so the news in Brazil, well, the Workers' Party is not condemning the Nicaraguans. They are starting then to get political actors to contribute to this information. There was the Christians are being repressed. They are being, their freedom of religion is being cut. And so we see that the platforms themselves are amplifying these news because they monetize this type of issue. Who does the surveillance? Yes, fact checkers, journalists, academics. How is it that the judicial is complying with their own rules? This is an article we wrote. They were saying that there was fraud in the elections. How do we avoid a 6th of January in Brazil? So is that working? Are people monitoring? All posting that is forbidden have been identified? Are they controlled? And also, often you had a basic reporting, you find a person, you get her phone number, and you give her data. And you map who is organizing, for example, the Bolsonaro's marches on September 7. The movements that are going against the results of the election. These people that were standing in front of the military headquarters. We were able to identify in these marches what it is that they're getting money from. We try to get to the person and see who it is that is distributing all the information. We discover where the money is coming from. The junk new ecosystem, that was work that we did. And just to close, for me, this was new. Disinformation, not only we try to research, to understand, we are also targets of disinformation, and that is something new. We become news. We were not used to that. So we have to be careful, because if we were careful before, verifying everything, verifying all the data, everything, we have to be even more careful with this, because this strategy of disinformation uses and targets the professional journalist. So any slip will make us targets of disinformation campaigns. And if you're a woman, it's even worse. That's what I had to say. No, not a lot, not a little.
You said a
spoke
lot.
very fast,
I imagine
and I'm sure the
steam coming out of the translator's head
suffered,
from all
but
and the speed with which you
many
shared
of the
all of this
participants
very
are Brazilian, so many of your
information.
acronyms
Thank you. Thank you,
were
Chris Targavila,
understood
for
by them.
clarifying
And
some of
thank you
the abbreviations that
for
were
those
mentioned, for
who
those of
did
us
not.
who were not able to follow because of it was from
It was really
information
very
particular
good.
to Brazil. But thank you. Thank you. And we could
I'm
feel that the
sorry for the
translators were
interpreters,
racing
because
after you.
we made them run. I am sorry. I really spoke very fast. So if anybody has a doubt about my acronyms, I will put them in the
We
chat.
have a whole lot of questions, Patricia. Very interesting
They're
questions.
very interesting. So
I'll let you have a
your
sip of water and
we
we'll
can
get started. Remember, if you have questions and you haven't asked them yet, you can ask your questions in English or in Portuguese or in Spanish,
Portuguese,
whatever language you feel most comfortable in. We'll hear your questions this way. All right, let's get started.
To her. Shall we start?
Let's go. So, one of the questions that I thought was very interesting was, were you able to identify financing from religious sources, from churches or people connected to churches?
Personally, I did not. What we did identify is that there are politicians that are linked to the church, especially in Brazil. They are Pentecostal churches that are owners of junk news sites and communication vehicles. So the political leaders linked to these churches are a pole of disinformation. One of the sites that has a party access is one of the parties linked to the evangelic church, and the site really what it does is disinformation against the opponents. And that is something very interesting. I've seen publications about the disinformation ecosystems linked to religion. That's really a very interesting thing. Very, very good. Very, very good.
Pregunta Aldo Benítez si en FOIA tienen un equipo especializado y dedicado a identificar esas noticias o campañas de desinformación.
There's a question here about from Folia about, is there a team? I'm sorry, who was this question from?
Pregunto Aldo Benítez.
Aldo Benítez.
During the elections, we had a girl power team, me and two other journalists who worked on digital political campaigns and everything around that, but it was specific for elections. And Folia has a data center, but not about disinformation. We had that in the election, and I'm going to continue covering that and the rest because we don't have enough people. And so it'd be great to continue covering that. But for the election, it worked very well.
Perfect. All right, let me see. We have another question. We have a whole lot of questions. Here's another one. Maria Eduarda Ramos Machado says, Patricia, and I'm translating the question from Portuguese, so be patient with me. My question has to do with the way that disinformation is distributed, and I've been speculating, and I want to confirm with you. Is it the use of Instagram pages that present themselves as just chatter or just gossipy sites, but in fact they are publishing disinformation about
Well, I think
candidates,
this is
opposition
fantastic
candidates?
because I didn't know about this. I had not seen this, but I recently worked on a paper about an investigation by Camila Rocha and Esther Solano that are political scientists, and they research the far right, and they mention how young people take political information from non-political profiles like fashion influencers or gossiping sites. So I think this paper, this topic of investigation would be fantastic, and it should be very efficient because this research is showing us that they take a lot more information and forming themselves in terms of politics in those sites and areas that are not related to politics. I think it would be fantastic.
Perfect, and let me clarify that thank you. Fofoca in Portuguese means gossip, gossipy information. Gossip, gossipy, chusmerio in Spanish.
I want to know how it's said in Spanish.
All right, we have another question from Valentina Martinez Lopez. How can we attack false news that comes from WhatsApp? If you had to recommend how we could start, what methodology would you recommend?
From the perspective of the communication outlets, the journalists, or the communication?
If a news website wants to follow disinformation from WhatsApp, how would you recommend that they get started? I assume the question is, how do we detect those campaigns, or how do you monitor that? What would you recommend? How to start?
I believe, well, of course, that as a communication outlet, you can establish your own monitoring system, but I think this is counterintuitive. You have some universities and colleges that have their areas of investigation and are doing this monitoring for many years ago, like the Federal University of Minas Gerais in Brazil, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and they have a very large number of groups, and they always want to complement work with journalists, for instance. And you're going to say, well, if we monitor this, well, how can we complement the academic aspect of this with the journalistic part of this? I don't know what country this person is from, but certainly if we find colleges or universities that have these clusters, they probably have this, because the only way of monitoring this is being a part of public groups and having maybe bots trained to detect certain phrases. But to try and do this from scratch would be counterintuitive because of the amount of data, but usually in colleges, you can start partnerships with them, and it's fantastic for both sides, for the academic part and for the journalistic part.
Perfect, thanks. We don't have a clarification here from what country that question came from, but all right. But I understand your recommendation is to look for partners, allies who can do this, and probably it would be
For the greater good.
a question now from Maria de la Luz Legorreta. Did you find evidence related to these disinformation campaigns and activity of these movements in Brazil?
I don't know if I understood. What's the question?
For movements in Brazil.
Sim, por exemplo, toda
Yes.
a movimentação.
For
Yes.
instance, all the movement in the Telegram groups and the WhatsApp groups that we detected, these people were fundraising, were doing fundraising and hiring buses, etc., with the money from businessmen and women to bring people to the anti-democratic manifestations. And so with this information, we can get to where the money is from. And this is what we were able to detect, one of the things. Another thing from these movements is that by monitoring or by working on papers about what's escaping this filter of platforms, you can also find coordinated movements of people who are working together. For instance, they work on ways of dodging the new rules of the platforms against disinformation, and this can be very easily proven. But directly related to the real world, I think that this aspect of movements, unfortunately, will become more and more common, answering the results of the election as a campaign instrument. And in this case, we can connect the real world with the disinformation mechanisms very easily. You can just follow the money and who's paying for this, where's the money, this is the bus, and this is the meat they bought. So
I do understand that some of this will be addressed in Janina's masterclass tomorrow of how to extract the databases in real life outside of social media networks. All right, we have another question, which is, for example, I would like, this is Uribarri, I'd like to know what regulations, what electoral regulations of Latin America have to say about this. I would like to know, is there a repository or a compendium, if you will, of election regulations from the region having to do with information?
I don't, and I don't know of any place like this, and it would be wonderful for this discussion. But I think that all the governments, all the legal side of the countries are trying to understand how to regulate this without criminalizing the user and without, of course, this breaching the freedom of expression. So in Brazil, the electoral authorities also started some very good measures and others that were more controversial. But it would be very good to hear if other countries in the region are trying to regulate this or not. It would be wonderful if this existed. I don't know of this.
This is a subject that we should be dealing with maybe in a different part of the program. And there is another question that comes from Jairo Molina, and he's asking about the app you mentioned for Facebook ads and things like that. So the scrapping app you mentioned.
For scrapping.
But that in
actually
realidad,
they do not exist any longer because Facebook went after them and brought them down. But I can get the name here. There was one called, well, it was two tiny companies, but There were many of them. I can just give you two names, and they were already brought down by Facebook. But I could even send you the site describing the software, etc. The software per se, I need to get the name here. Two very tiny companies. It was AUTLAND, Outland. And it was another one.
Jairo, we are going to be looking for the name and we're going to be sending it to you later, or sending it in the chat.
Outland Software,
okay?
I think was it.
So we have another question that says, do you think that once awareness has grown and the TSE solutions, do you believe that the Hates cabinet is going to, or did it take part in the elections in 2022 in Brazil?
I believe that the political strategy of disinformation is an issue that will not just go away. And as we saw, technology is evolving, and they are not going to use the massive data again, but maybe they are going to use this thing that you mentioned of using Instagram and gossip sites. But in the elections, for sure, all the sites, not at the same level, but they all started digital actions, and this would include disinformation campaigns by what was called the hate cabinet. And also to shape the media and your narrative in terms of shifting attention to other issues like the Christian persecution, or so-called Christian persecution, that was amplified in the groups. It was established by politicians. So they themselves would mention this, and they would try to make it viral on their nets. And you always have strategy analysis of the so-called hatred cabinet. So they were very active.
There's another question from Jasmine Acuña from Paraguay. How did you see the cooperation between the TSE and the platforms in Brazil? As far as they know, do you believe that the STA was able to label the false information? What's your take on the matter?
I believe that, well, it was much better than in 2018, of course, and there was an actual effort of the team to fight disinformation in TSE, but some things were not working quite right. And there's, for instance, this information that everyone has requested. I have requested it myself, and even the public ministry in Brazil, the prosecutor, already asked for this, and we don't have transparency in terms of the team for the moderation of the platforms in each language. They do not give us this information, or the investment in AI. So in a way, yes, this improved significantly in the denunciation channel that they would then transfer to the platform, so they could assess if the content would breach the policies or not. Sometimes they wouldn't breach them, and some others, it would take a long time. It wasn't an agile system or method. So you have a video on YouTube, or you have content saying that there was an electoral fraud, and if it takes you 1 day to remove it, it already went around the planet 3 times. So I think it was very good to have this memorandum of understanding. It was very good to have this interface between TSE and the platforms. But to make it more agile, we would need larger teams. YouTube, for instance, they were overwhelmed and swamped with the volume of work. How can you moderate a 3-hour video, for instance? And I think it was good, but there is room for improvement.
Hay varias otras interesantes.
Well, there are other interesting questions. There's one from Sarabia that says, Google, they are companies that they are looking for profit. So how can you do this kind of moderation if there is there is the aim to be profitable?
That's a very interesting question. And I believe that many of these companies and platforms actually begin to understand that there is a reputational cost of leaving that kind of content in their platforms, of this informational content. So you can see, even on Twitter, if you let a level of content of disinformation and hatred language, you're going to start losing users. And I agree 100% that there needs to be some kind of economic incentive for them to act. This is normal. This is a private company. They are looking for money. But of course, if this kind of content would get a lot of engagement, then that would be good for the bottom line of companies. However, if this is going to increase more and more the reputational cost for them, they could lose some of their clients for ads. I don't want to have my ad placed on the anti-vaxxer platform, or I don't want to be in a social network of someone who's denying the elections. So there are incentives that are coming up that will allow the platforms to lead in the fight against disinformation, also as a need of their business model.
Si existe esta ventana, hay algo que podemos hacer.
The opportunity comes up, and that makes sense, of course. And there is one last question, Luisa, and I'm sorry about that. There are lots of questions here, dozens of questions being asked, but I'd like you to see them later. And I have to send you the name of the
I
two
was
companies.
looking at the
Yeah, but
name of
that
both
will
software
have
companies.
time when Renata comes with her survey. But Luisa Podenmüller asked about the comparison between 2018 and 2022. Have you seen changes in the way people monetize information, electoral information, and what you see for the future? What do you foresee for next elections? Have you seen a new
That's an
way of
excellent
doing things?
question. And yes, indeed, it became much more complex, and the volume is just larger in terms of fake news and YouTubers that are funding themselves with ads. That already existed, but now the volume is just huge. It's much higher in terms of the whole universe. And since you had a candidate in 2018 that was already very familiar with the digital strategies and the development of disinformation, once this candidate stayed for 4 years in power, when you have the machinery of government working for you, your possibilities just grow significantly. So I think that this increased his power, or their power, and even more so when you had one unifying campaign, which was Big Lies, Stop the Steal. So I think that this bringing together of things, it's much more complex, and there is a very significant role of Equi and TikTok or Newsmax or any of those. And something that I was looking at recently, and it's very interesting, she asked, where could this information go, or where would this lead us to? And we saw in the last years that both Google and Facebook would limit the kind of targeting that they can perform in digital campaigns or digital propaganda to avoid the kind of distortion that we had in 2016. So nowadays you can segment much less than you could before. So I was looking at the streaming channels, and I saw that they are using political ads, and there is no regulation in terms of targeting for streaming. So nowadays, everyone uses a lot of streaming instead of cable TV, for instance, and streaming companies have the information about the profile that is watching them. They sell that to a data broker, and they are even using this even for the midterm elections. There's a study that is very interesting about this from the North Carolina University about the targeting and the segmentation based on this. And I think this is going to be moving forward. In 2 years from now, much more people is going to be using streaming, and you have information that is targeted to this streaming.
I told you that was the last one, but I lied. I have another one right now. because I think that it might be of interest to everyone. How was the work in Telegram carried out? Because that was something new, right?
Of the
About
journalists or the
journalists, you
authorities?
mean?
Journalists.
Vou responder. Só antes disso que eu
Well,
lembrei
I'm
uma
gonna answer this. I just remember this
eu me lembro, a gente
before.
em 2018 teve,
In 2018, we had, well, what's happened in Brazil and everything. But in the 2020 campaign,
você teve o cara que era o estrategista digital.
we had this guy who was the digital strategy leader for Trump, Brett Marscale, and he said that they had the plan of sending 1 billion texts to the Trump voters in the rallies, and you would have to give them your phone, and they would use that database to send billions or millions of text messages, SMS. And well, there was a pandemic, and the caucuses didn't work; they were a failure. But you see how this goes around the world. We had WhatsApp in Brazil. In the US, they use more text, and so they're going to use SMS. And the same with the apps. In India, you have the app of Narendra Modi, of the chief ministers, the governors, and it was already pre-installed in the smartphone that the people would get from them. And in the American election and the next one, the candidates were offering their apps because now you don't have the platform midway between your supporter and the information that you're going to send them. So I think that this kind of issues just go around the world perfecting themselves.
También entonces es que sigamos las tendencias de lo que va pasando en términos
So one of the recommendations would be to pay attention to trends,
Precisely.
to global trends. And I'd like to be very careful, and that's why we should thank you, thank Patricia, and I'm going to ask Renata to come back, and please do not disconnect before completing the evaluation, because that's very important to us as a team and for the project as well. So please, I'll pass the floor to Renata, and please answer the survey, and I'll ask Patricia to bear with us for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we are going to be closing this session.
Gente, que sessão incrível!
What a session. What a fantastic session. You were already wonderful in Craig's session by answering our poll. And now you're going to see the question for this section with Patricia. Director, could you show us the QR code, please? And we're also going to share that in the chat. You already see the link there. And you can see that this is a personalized link. Everyone has a different layout. We have Patricia's name to not get mixed up. 2 more minutes. We had a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement with Craig. We're going to take hours to read that, but it's going to be wonderful.
Laura, I'm gonna leave you to them, okay? So they don't keep seeing my face.
Ok, perfecto.
Obrigada, amanhã tem mais.
Thank you very much. And we have more assessments tomorrow. We're going to see the evolution that we had from today till tomorrow. So thank you, everyone.
Que Renata se iba, vos, Patricia, quedaste un solo segundo, que ahora damos el anuncio de lo que viene mañana.
You should bear with us.
Eu queria pedir desculpas pela
Very well. I just wanted to apologize because I used a lot of acronyms and I was speaking just too fast. I want to thank all of you and I hope it was useful.
Yo aprendí, al menos yo aprendí muchísimo.
Well, I've learned a lot, so it was certainly very useful. But let's let people answer the survey, and then we get back to the closing remarks.
empiezan a aparecer los listos, ¿no? Feito, listo, bueno. Bueno, entonces, muchísimas gracias de vuelta, Patricia. Estuvo
All right,
increíble.
thank you, Patricia. This was amazing. Thank you very much. And we are left with a lot of questions. This was a fantastic masterclass, as I am sure we'll learn and be able to use the information and become ever more sophisticated in our ability to investigate these kinds of disinformation cases. So we will see you again tomorrow. It is absolutely necessary for you to participate in all the master classes if you want to obtain the certificate from the master classes, and also to be able to apply for the grants. Tomorrow, there will be 2 other amazing master classes. Claire Wardell is going to talk about disinformation in the area of health and science, and I would not miss that for anything. And Janina Segnini will talk to us about data investigation, data work on data sets. So let me invite you all to come back tomorrow. Thank you again, Patricia. And I have a phrase I'd like to end with. Collaboration is our most effective tool against transformation, against disinformation, and transparency is our shield. Thank you. See you again. See you tomorrow. Patricia, if you want to say a few words, yours.
Well, I just wanted to thank
The
you.
floor is
Thank you
yours.
so much. I'm very excited to hear, to see your speeches and the topics that you are choosing. I saw some ideas that are just fantastic. So if I can help you in any way, I'm gonna love to help you. And I have some ideas of very important topics that we can be monitoring. I saw in the chat some people saying that the form for the feedback was complicated. Maybe Craig's and not mine, that the questions were related to Craig's presentation, not mine. It's true, Brazil, and I'm gonna have to send that by email to all of you because it's just wrong, and we want to assess Patricia correctly with the content that she shared with us that was so fantastic and so rich. So I'm gonna get the list of everyone who's with us, and I'm going to send the email to all of you, and please answer that because I'm gonna be bothering you tomorrow.
Lo van a recibir de Renata. Mañana les damos 2 minutitos para contestar porque insistimos, nos interesa un montón su feedback. Gracias y los esperamos mañana.
Obrigada,
Tchau.
obrigada, gente.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you
See
so
tomorrow.
much.
Thank you
Thank you
very
everyone.
much.